Cameraperson. It's a really unique film made by Kirsten Johnson, who is a cinematographer with credits on dozens of documentary films in the last 20 years. What she's done here is a sort of video journal, snapshots of her work taken from used and unused footage that she shot for many of her movies. Individual moments that, for one reason or another, shaped her life. We travel with her across the world to places like Bosnia, Nigeria, Afghanistan, Guantanamo Bay, also across the US, and experience what it was like to be with a camera in all these places pursuing different stories, which are honestly pretty tough subjects for the most part. Bosnian genocide, for example, interviews with its survivors, Afghanistan as well, a murder trial in the US, things like that. And there are also a few snippets of Kirsten's personal life, some footage of her kids, her dad, her mother suffering from Alzheimer's disease. So, because it doesn't really have a traditional story structure, it is most definitely not for everyone. I'd say it's going to be interesting for primarily for people who are already into cinema and even more specifically into documentaries, because this footage shown here, sometimes quite raw, gives this unique, unfiltered look into what it's like to go through the world with a camera in your hand. And you can get a sense that Kirsten looks at the world slightly differently because of the lens that she's looking through. There's always, this search for a meaningful shot. And on the other hand, you can also see how people behave in front of the camera. And it's especially interesting to see the people in places like Bosnia, Afghanistan, Nigeria act fairly naturally and normally, whereas the Americans almost always noticeably behave differently. They're very aware of the camera, and you can see that they're kind of putting on a mask to a varying degree, of course, but still something that I noticed. Also, while the film has moments of simple beauty in it, moments of relief and respite, particularly the personal moments, the majority of it does touch on some very tough issues, and so it's not so easy to watch. There's an interview with a rape survivor, an interview with a young boy who witnessed his brother's death, pretty gruesome way, an interview with a desperate American teenager who is looking to get an abortion because she cannot afford supporting another child. It shows snippets of all these difficult aspects of life that many of us don't experience on a daily basis. And it also poses the question, how does this affect the filmmaker, the person who shoots all these stories? How do they then process all that they have witnessed and experienced? So I think it's certainly an interesting piece. I do think it's by no means perfect, but that's kind of to be expected. It was basically various bits of leftover footage put together by a single person, and so treating it as this full-fledged documentary on its own would be kind of unfair. But when you do realize what it is, treat it as this kind of personal journal, then it mostly works. Gives you something to think about. That's for sure. Although, again, I think it's definitely not for everyone.